Okay, let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the second session in three of Paratus's MAHA webinar series. This one covering the topic of clean or cleaner label and what it means for us in this ultra-processed world. Just as a refresher, MAHA, or Make America Healthy Again, is a platform dedicated to promoting informed conversations around food, health, and wellness. Through the Paratus MAHA Unpacked webinar series, we explore the trends, the challenges, and innovations shaping the future of nutrition and consumer trust. Just as an introduction, I'm Matt Crumpton, VP of Sales here at Paratus USA, and we're excited to have Senna and Justine here from Paratus HQ in Belgium, from our R&D and Regulatory Affairs departments. Great to have both of you here with us today.
Thanks a lot. Very happy to be there.
Sorry, my page wasn't advancing. There we go. There's our great pictures. Okay, in terms of the agenda, let's have a look at the agenda. So we're going to go through a few housekeeping details, spend a few moments talking about Paratus, not very long for some of those who may not be so familiar with us. Then we'll look at the takeaways from session one, the lessons we had from Europe. And then this session two, as I said, we're focusing on clean or cleaner label in this UPF world. Asking questions such as why do we process food, and Paratus's position on this UPF food, initiatives at state level and the clean label definitions, and then food scanners is the other topic. And then we'll have a quick wrap up and Q&A and closing. So in terms of the Q&A, please, there is a Q&A button on the Zoom area, so please drop any questions into that area as we're going through, and we'll take those during that Q&A session at the end. A lot of questions we had in the last session was, will we get the deck after the meeting? Yes, we can send the deck of the content we're going to present this afternoon to you after the meeting. One other housekeeping note is please stay connected at the end of the webinar because there will be a short, very short 2-minute post survey. So we really appreciate you answering a few questions to tell us how we did today so that we can make improvements and get even better for that third session coming up very shortly. Okay, so before we get started, a quick advertisement to that third session in the MAHA webinar series, which is actually taking place on the 14th of August. On May the 22nd, the MAHA Commission released its groundbreaking assessment, identifying the key drivers behind the childhood chronic disease crisis. This highlighted issues such as poor diet, insufficient physical activity, and over-medicalization. Actually, on the 12th of August, the MAHA Commission has to submit a Make Our Children Healthy Again strategy to the President. And this is based on the initial assessment. So just 2 days after that date, on the 14th of August, Paratus will have its third post-MAHA report session, where we'll be reviewing for you what we found from that assessment and what we can, as an industry, learn from that Make Our Children Healthy Again report. So please do add that to your agenda. And we look forward to welcoming you to that third session on the 14th of August. So in terms of Paratus, for those of you not so familiar who we are, let me spend a few quick moments explaining who we are. Paratus is an international company that offers a full range of innovative food ingredients and solutions for the bakery, sweet goods, and chocolate categories. We serve primarily large industrial bakeries and retailers in the US, in addition to food service chains, distributors, and artisan customers around the world. Our US headquarters are in Pennsauken, New Jersey, with a national footprint, and our global headquarters are in Belgium. Together, we aim to move the planet forward by creating innovative food solutions for the health and well-being of people everywhere. Okay. In terms of the recap of session one, our guest speakers were Sophia and Erin. Erin from the Grain Foods Foundation and Sophia from our Paratus Group Regulatory Affairs Department. Key topics covered were MAHA and MOCHA initiatives and their potential impact on the US food industry, as well as the evolution of EU food law and implications for the USA. They also touched on food additives, with a focus on the EU approval process and comparison with what we're experiencing in the US. So for those of you who weren't able to join that session, please let us know because we can again send out the deck that was presented on that date, and there is a recording if you're interested in watching that back. So please let us know if you're interested in receiving that. Okay, enough of myself speaking. I'm now delighted to welcome our guest speakers, Senna and Justine, to walk us through how clean or cleaner label fits within an ultra-processed foods world. Over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Matt. So you can move to the next slide. Well, to introduce that session, I would like to bring here a very important figure, which is that you all know that the world population is continuously increasing. And if we look at the forecast, we should reach the 9 billion people by 2050. What is absolutely certain about it is that relying on traditional means only in order to feed such an amount of people is no longer an option. And that is the reason why we have to process food. So if you go to the next slide, of course, food processing is definitely not something new. Humankind is indeed processing food since many centuries. And if you look at the definition of food processing, it refers to any manufacturing method which is used in order to turn fresh food into food products. So washing, shopping, pasteurizing, but even packaging fall under the scope of food processing. Something also very important to emphasize here is that there are many benefits of processing food. It can be to make the food safe for human consumption. It can also be to extend the shelf life of products, even to improve the nutritional value, or also to reduce the food waste. So those are only a couple of examples why we can process food and what it can be advantageous to process food. Now, through years, we have seen that some food classification systems have been introduced in order to classify food products in function of their level of processing. We have seen the emergence of such systems in Europe, but also in Guatemala and in the US, where they classified food products from unprocessed or minimally processed food to highly processed foods. But today we are hearing more and more about ultra-processed food. And basically this terminology is coming from a group of Brazilian researchers led by Carlos Monteiro, who has introduced the NOVA classification system. If you look at the definition of UPF, as it is shortened, it refers to industrial formulations made entirely or mostly from substances extracted from foods, dairies from food constituents, or synthesized in laboratories from food substrate or other organic sources. So concretely, how does the system work? So they have defined 4 different categories that you can see here. So you have group 1, which is all the non-processed or minimally processed foods. So for instance, you have there examples like fruits and vegetables. Then you have the group 2, which is all the culinary ingredients, as they call them. There you have examples like oils, sugars, and honey. Then you have the processed food under group 3. There you have products like bread or wine, for instance. And lastly, you have the group of ultra-processed foods with examples like donuts, soft drinks, ice creams, and so on. Now, if you move to the next slide, a reason why we do see UPF, which is really booming at the time being, is because the science is really on the rise in order to somehow assess there is potentially a link between the consumption of UPF and adverse effect on human health. Although today the evidence which is available is quite, let's say, weak, it's a fact that some of those studies are reporting adverse effects. And of course, those studies are booming in the media. And yeah, it's true that we cannot ignore all the no's that we are hearing from the media. This, of course, leads to some potential consequences. First of all, in terms of consumer perception, because we do see that consumers become more and more reluctant to consume that specific type of products. But Senna will touch about that later in the webinar. And next to that, you also have all the regulatory changes, because we do see that the framework is becoming stricter when it goes to UPF. Talking about regulatory, you have here, let's say, the global overview of how the topic is being tackled at the worldwide level. So you can see that we have different approaches. If we look first at the worst case scenario, let's say, it's the case of Colombia, where they have quite recently introduced taxes in order to tackle this specific type of products. Then you have countries like, for instance, Brazil, Belgium, but also France, where they are mentioning UPF in their dietary guideline directly as part of the recommendations. Next to that, you have countries like Canada, where they also mention UPF in their dietary guideline, but not directly as part of the recommendation. And then you have countries like, for instance, Australia, India, but also US. Even the situation is evolving in the US. We will touch about that a bit later, where they are making reference to food processing as a whole and not specifically focusing on ultra processing. An interesting positioning is also coming from the Nordics in EU, where they have a kind of, let's say, neutral position, in the sense that they acknowledge the fact there is evidence available showing some adverse effects, but according to them, having a specific policy on UPF will not add any value to the existing policy that are already tackling, let's say, products with bad nutritional profile. Now, if you, thank you. If you move to the next slide. So something very important to keep in mind when it goes to UPF is that there is still today no regulatory consensus. And you have here plenty of examples to illustrate. So something quite important which is coming in Europe is the fact that the European Commission is foreseeing a study in order to assess the UPF consumption across the European population. And of course, depending on the outcomes of that study, this might feed the position of national authorities. When you look at the positioning of some national authorities, you have, for instance, UK and France that have recently rejected the NOVA classification. While it's a bit of a paradox in France, because you also have at the same time a group of stakeholders that push to have a new front of pack, which would be a combination of the current front of pack applicable in France together with the NOVA classification. Then you have a proposal in Italy to ban advertising that is specifically intended on UPF products. And then if you leave Europe, you have, for instance, China, where there is an ongoing development of a standard that defines natural versus processed food. So at the time being, there is absolutely no reference to UPF, but this first standard might pave the way for something next. And then you also have the case here of Brazil, which seems to be a bit, let's say, inspired by what is happening in Colombia, because there is a proposal to introduce taxes on products considered as bad for the planet and health. And of course, UPF is part of the discussions. So this leads me to our positioning at Puratos. And the first thing I would like to highlight is the fact that we align with the Nordic nutrition recommendations. So according to them, so therefore also according to us, we should not focus on the level of processing, but we should focus on the nutritional value of products. And by doing that, we should advise people to limit the consumption of products that have, let's say, a bad nutrient profile, so products that are high in fat, sugar, and salt, regardless how they have been produced. Because we have seen that processing in itself is not bad in itself. It can bring a lot of benefits. So we should not focus on this level of processing, but really on what matters, namely the nutritional aspects. So we have an internal positioning at Puratos. So if you move to the next slide, the position is relying on the 5 pillars that you can see here. So first of all, food safety is our top priority, and it's really the baseline in all Puratos activities. So if it's not safe, it's not food. Then we are driven by innovation, in the sense that each ingredient present in a product formulation has a reason to be, but also each processing step embedded in a manufacturing process has a reason to be, which means that we are not over-processing our products. Then, of course, health and well-being is at the heart of our R&D activities. So whenever possible, we are reviewing the product formulations in order to increase, let's say, the goods. So increase protein, fibers, grains, and seeds, and reduce the bads. So basically fat, sugar, and salt. Then sustainability is part of our DNA, and this is more and more true considering the world we are living in. And for that, we are relying on 3 main pillars, which are better people, better planet, and better health. And last, but certainly not least, we are educating as good as possible our customer in order that they reach the final consumer with informed and clear information to support them in making the good food choices. So now looking at the reality you are facing today in the US, well, UPF is completely part of the MAHA movement. So to very quickly remind the objective of MAHA, well, actually the objective is triple. So first of all, they would like to rethink policies on a lot of different topics, on nutrition, on healthy lifestyle, on over-reliance on medications. Then they would like to protect experts' recommendation from what they call inappropriate influence. And by that, they mostly mean industry influence. And they also would like to increase transparency on existing data and by extension to increase the trust in those data. To do so, they have defined 5 key priorities that you can see here. So of course, UPF is part of the first one, which is to tackle the chronic disease epidemic. But then next to that, they have defined 3 more environmentally driven priorities. So to advance regenerative agriculture, to protect natural habitat, and to eliminate environmental toxin. And then there is a more, let's say, global one. It's to expose corporate corruption. If we look at what is happening at the federal level, so we know that FDA is currently working together with other agencies like USDA on a definition of UPF. And they have launched a couple of days ago a request for information that will run until end of September. And basically, they are seeking feedback from stakeholders on a couple of questions, such as, is the terminology ultra-processed is really fit for purpose, whether they should consider specific ingredients and specific processes as part of the framework, if the nutritional aspect needs to be taken into account, and so on. So we should hear more about that in the coming months. But the big question mark that remains today is whether this will be a rulemaking or simply a guidance. And next to that, you also have another initiative at the federal level, which is the proposal for a front-of-pack labeling scheme. It was also subject to a public consultation that ended, if I'm not mistaken, in mid-July. And so this is still a draft, but if passed, it means that all food that must provide nutrition facts today will have to display on top a nutrition info box, which would be basically an indication on the level of saturated fats, sodium, and added sugars, together with an indication whether this is a low, medium, or high content in the product. So this is for the situation at the federal level, but we can also see on the next slide that states are also quite, let's say, active. So because there are lots of draft bills that are being introduced at the time being in order to really tackle food school schemes. So if you look at states like Arizona, Utah, or Alabama, they are currently having draft bills in order to forbid the use of specific ingredients like potassium bromate, titanium dioxide, but also the dyes in those foods sold to school. And by the way, as mentioned here, all the dyes are currently under phasing out also at the federal level. Then you have the case of Massachusetts, where they would like to restrict the use of specific ingredient types like stabilizer, thickeners, colors, emulsifiers, but also specific processes, like, for instance, hydrogenation of oils or hydrolysis of proteins. Then you have the recent case of Texas, where they passed quite recently a bill in order to impose a warning statement on products that contain specific additives. And lastly, you also have the case of California and Pennsylvania, where on top of the restriction on specific ingredient type, they also would like to include some nutritional aspects. Maybe a last word on that slide, because we do see a lot of discussion around additives, but it's important to keep in mind that all the additives that are in use today and approved today are continuously and scrutiniously assessed by international authorities in terms of food safety, which means that all the food additives that are authorized today are safe to be used in food. So I think that considering all those discussions that are ongoing, it's an important reminder to keep in mind. And then the last point that I would like to bring today is all those, let's say, certification program initiatives that we see popping up in the US. So you have the first one, which is here, the non-UPF verified, which has been launched by the Non-GMO project, and it's at the moment in a pilot phase. So we still don't have a clear vision on the criteria. This should be finalized by end of the year. But technically, it should include a list of prohibited ingredients. So most likely food additives, some food additives will be on that list. Then they also would like to come with some nutrient thresholds, so likely on saturated fats, added sugar, and sodium. Then they also would like to have a list of processes to be permitted or not. And then they also would like to have a conditional use of specific ingredient, a bit like it's done today with the organic certification. And then another program, it's the non-UPF certified. It's a bit less vocal compared to the non-UPF verified, but still important to monitor because they would like to launch in fall, technically, a platform in order to connect together researcher and health practitioner in order to advance the research on UPF. So I think it's two initiatives that are quite important to follow because if tomorrow we start having these logos on pack, consumers will become more and more aware on UPF, basically. As we are talking about consumers, Senna, can you please tell us a bit more about consumers' perception when it goes to UPF?
Of course. Thank you, Justine. Yes, let's move on to consumers. First thing, if we compare actually full year 2023 and 2024, actually conversation volumes about processed food increased. Indeed, people are talking more about processed food, like 25% increase. But then what do they talk about? Is it always negative or some positive things also? Here you see a list. In terms of negative associations, there is fear of health risk, lack of nutritional value, lack of transparency, influence on children, and environmental impacts. They are seen as the negative associations. On the other hand, consumers appreciate processed food for convenience, that may take shorter time to prepare, affordability, of course, indulgence and pleasure, but also there are nutrient-dense options. That's a bit opposite of like lack of nutritional value. So processed food can be seen as lacking nutritional value, but consumers also realize that it can be nutrient-dense. But if we then move on to Purato's answer to some of these concerns, first of all, the nutritional value part. This is something Puratos is working very heavily on by increasing the good and decreasing the bad. So what we do is increase fruits, increase grains and seeds, increase proteins, fibers, whereas we decrease sugars, fats, and salt. Another concern of consumers is about lack of transparency. This can be translated into cleaner labels, but also organic. A small part of Purato's portfolio is organic. Now I want to focus a bit more on cleaner label. We normally tend to start with a definition, but here actually there is no single definition of clean label. This means that different players can take their own definition, but it usually means a short, simple, clean list. For example, Nestle and Bimbo, they really talk about this shortness and simpleness, also being free from artificial additives. When we see Carrefour or Whole Foods, we notice that they have more strict self-imposed standards, like banning of certain ingredients, not allowing certain additives, having blacklists. On the other hand, Costco, for example, they are taking a bit more case-by-case approach, a bit more measured and risk-based. At this moment, I would like to talk a little bit about Puratos' approach to clean label, or as we sometimes call it, cleaner label. So for Puratos, clean label are those items that do not contain any additives. And such items, if there are colors and flavors in it, they can only be nutmeg. So no artificial flavors, no artificial colors. But we also have cleaner label approach, meaning that items representing an effort to remove one or more of the additives. In this group, we accept a certain group of additives in our Puratos positive list. And of course, colors and flavors, again, must be nutmeg. So how did we form Puratos positive list? By different contributions from consumer information tool, from customer no-no list, a little bit like the blacklist or a warning list, but also we watch the regulatory development at different levels in the world, at European level, at FDA level. So then if I want to give an example of the cleaner label approach, because that can be a bit more vague, here you see a baked food. Inside there is a fruit filling. This is a raspberry filling. Here, for example, this is a cleaner label filling for us because it's completely free of preservatives. It has no artificial colors, no artificial flavors. On the other hand, of course, it contains the fruit, but also it may contain, for example, pectin. Pectin is known by consumers as it is a home-use ingredient as well in jams. It can contain citric acid. This is also known to be coming from citrus fruits like lemon. So it means that for our cleaner label approach, it doesn't mean no additives, but all those additives that are in Puratos positive. Then next, we can move on to very popular concepts that we have seen recently, which are food scanner apps. It's really something to keep an eye on because they basically inform consumers about the healthiness of food products by a simple scanning the barcode. So, which means during shopping, consumers do not need to rely on the package, usually very small font. Also, they don't need to spend a lot of time because once scanned, the info is available 24/7. They can have it in their app forever. Another thing these apps do is when you scan something, if it is not very good, it may give an alternative. So if you scroll down, it says, this wasn't very good, but there is a better version. So it does directly influence the purchasing decision. I would like to give an example actually in the next slide. Okay, which apps? There are some global ones. Yuka, for example, it has more than 60 million users. There is Open Food Fact. There is MyFitnessPal. It is actually a fitness app, but has a very good part about food scanners as well. On the other hand, there are country-based apps as well, like we see NHS Food Scanner in UK. In US, there is the Bobby Food Scanner. Bobby is actually an influencer, basically, and his followers want to buy the things that are Bobby approved. So that's very particular, but we will see these things that may increase as well, like really tailor-made scanner apps. But because Yuka is the most popular one, let's focus on Yuka in the next slide. So one might wonder, okay, this app, how does it actually give the score? How does it calculate it? Well, what it does, Yuka, is 60% of the score is coming from the nutritional quality, which is good actually. It means that if there is too much sugar, points are dropped. If there is protein, the points are increased, that kind of nutritional quality. 30% of the score is about presence of the food additives. And there, not all food additives are equal. Some are given worse score, some are more neutral. And also organic certification. So 10% of the score comes from organic certification, which makes it a little bit biased towards organic. but at least that percentage is low. Now, on the right-hand side, you see an example of a scanned food, basically. I scanned a Black Bear Mountain barbecue sauce. This is actually made and sold in US, but we also have it in Europe. So you see that the score is very bad. It gets a 0. By the way, it's common in Yuka. Yuka does not give scores very easily. But then you try to understand why. Any point with red is explaining the bad score. There are 2 additives. At least one of them seems to be a risky additive. We will see later what it is. Sugar, too much sugar, and too much sodium. Actually, indeed, 2.6 gram is a lot of salt per 100 gram. If we click once more, then we see what this app can do. Indeed, it is the same scan. So on the additives, you click once, for example, and then it opens the full additive list with just one click. Well, we knew there were 2 additives. It now shows what they are. It says E150 is caramel color, and the other one is xanthan gum. Caramel color has a red next to it, and xanthan gum has a limited risk yellow next to it. Then as a consumer, you might wonder, but why caramel color has this? Another click, you reach to the rightmost part. Okay, you see some health associations, some links. But again, as Justine mentioned, today, all the additives that are approved, they are recognized as safe by the international competent authorities. So it is important to take it with a perspective. But we really wanted to introduce you to how these apps work, because likely that we will see more of these in future. I think one more slide on this Yuka app, just to give a perspective. So the first barbecue sauce, which received 0 over 100, was the Black Bear Mountain sauce. Another barbecue sauce was scanned. Well, increased score 33. What made it better? You look, well, additives more or less the same, but then salt. So from 2.6 gram, this barbecue sauce had only 0.1 gram salt, which of course gave it more points. Then we move on to another sauce, HP sauce. There are good things about it. It is much less sugar. It is only 1 additive, and that's not even considered as a risky additive. But yet again, it couldn't move on to the green zone, just because, again, we see too much salt here. So if the last one had less salt, I am sure we would have gotten the green score. So it's basically a calculation. So I think that's it. That's we basically give the introduction about Yuka. And one last thing, in France and in USA, Yuka has launched very recently a call-out functionality. What is this? It means that consumers are now able to call out manufacturers directly via the app with just 1 click and ask them to remove food additives classified as at risk by Yuka. So basically, there are 81 of these food additives, and they are typically the red ones. So I don't know if anybody has noticed this, but in France, we have our customer told us, well, they might sometimes receive too much email in their customer service. So it's important to be ready for this kind of events. So next, I think we can wrap up the full session. The first part was about the definition of UPF. Justine went through that part. Basically, there is no consensus on UPF, although it's booming everywhere. The terminology is based on vague concepts. It is today too much focused on the process while ignoring nutritional aspects. Cleaner label concept can indeed be part of the solution. Again, there is no exact definition of clean label, but it usually means a clean, clear, and shorter ingredient list. And of course, lastly, the tools. Tools emerge to help consumers. So apps like Yuka that we went through, it helps consumers to make good choices quickly. But of course, the intention is good, but caution still. remains to be needed because things may get, those apps may take things a bit too far. I think this concludes our part. And
Yes,
Matt,
thank you very
there you
much. Thank you
go.
very much to both of you. Very insightful.
Yeah.
Just to encourage anyone on the call, if you have any questions and answers, please click the button at the bottom of your page and enter your question there, and we'll be happy to answer those. But in the meantime, I have a couple here. A question for you, Senna. Is it mainly consumers who are using the scanners like Yuka, or are there like retailers also using it for their product development, or how do you see that?
Great question, because like for me, up until recently, I was thinking it's a consumer app completely. But then I have read and I have also met some retailers who actually announced that, for example, Carrefour in Belgium, they openly said that they now look at Yuka ratings. So when they ask better scores from their suppliers. Who else? Intermarché in France. They are also open about the fact that they use Yuka. Also brands, like B2C brands. There is one brand, it is more cosmetic because Yuka also has a cosmetic part. They basically develop in their product development process, they take into Yuka's algorithm. So the answer is yes, it's wider. Now it's wider than consumers.
I can speak for the consumer part because my 22-year-old daughter, who's now back from college, she's going through the refrigerator at home using the app and telling my wife what she should and shouldn't be buying. So it's very personal to home for me. And a question for you, Justine. What can we really expect to come on UPF from a pure regulatory standpoint? And do you see that coming more quickly than slowly, or how do you see that?
Well, it's definitely not an easy question to answer, but to me, what is certain is that the topic is definitely here to stay. If you look at the situation today, we see more and more initiatives taken at the country level, and this all across the world. Consumers are seeking for more, let's say, natural products, and each month you see publication in scientific journals. So definitely the topic will not disappear. I think that what we are lacking today is really a clear definition of UPF. Because, okay, I presented to you that the definition is coming from NOVA, but if you look at the situation today, there are many, many interpretations on what UPF, let's say, really is. For some, it's linked to the process, for others, linked to the nutritional aspect, for others, to specific ingredients, sometimes a bit of everything. So I think that's having a consistent definition is, to me, really key prior to implement any kind of policies. In terms of initiatives that we can foresee, we are today observing massive public health concern that address that. Well, before they were addressing, affecting specific areas, but now it's tend to be more and more global. So I think that to address that, we can expect more and more mandatory initiatives instead of voluntary ones. And this can be translated into many things. It can be taxes, it can be marketing restrictions, it can be threshold on specific nutrient, or even a combination of all of these. And this, of course, with the ultimate goal to oblige the industry to reformulate products, to have on the shelf products with shorter ingredient lists, with better nutrient profile. So I don't know how fast it will go, but for sure it's the direction we are going into.
Okay, great, thank you. We just had another question pop up on the question and answer board here. Maybe for you, Sena, do these apps that we were talking about, do they read just the in-store generated labels? Sorry, do they read the in-store generated labels, such as those that come from the in-store bakery that are quite manually added? Or is it just the ones on consumer packaged goods products with the barcode on the back of the packaging? Do you know?
Great question. Definitely everything CPG, consumer packaged goods, the barcodes, it's there. It's there. When it comes to in-store generated labels, depends how wide the item is. For example, in Carrefour, if I buy an item that is very known. It's in various different stores in France, in multiple countries. I do see a rating, but there are occasions where the app says this item is not yet recognized, but help us recognize it, because there is also a step there. Then you can maybe put that info back to the team of Yuka or whichever the app is. So there are like big teams working behind to get it 100%.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Thank you. Any other questions from anybody on the call? Okay, well, if there's no others, that really wraps up the Q&A session. But if you do have any other specific questions that you didn't want to put on the board here, and you'd like answering directly from one of our experts here at Purados, please, let me advance to the next slide. Please don't hesitate in shooting an email to one of my 3 colleagues here on the screen. So for specific questions regarding the US market, please reach out to our VP of R&D, Joe Layton. His email address is here on the screen. For anything more specific to global markets, you might be exporting to perhaps, then please reach out to Sena. And for those questions specific to Europe, please reach out to Justine directly. And again, their emails are on the screen, and we can send out the deck afterwards if you don't have time to write those down now. Okay. Last public service announcement. Please, one last plug for that 3rd session in the MAHA series that's happening on the 14th of August at 1 p.m. Eastern US time. We hope to see you, as many of you back and your colleagues back here in a couple of weeks. So many thanks for joining us today, and we hope the session's been useful to you and to your business, and we look forward to welcoming you back soon and helping you with future products. There will be a post-survey a pop-up when the webinar finishes, so please do help us out by completing that and just telling us how we did. In the meantime, thanks for your time today and for joining us. Hope to see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.